Sheev Palpatine's reign as Emperor of the Galactic Empire represents one of the most infamous examples of authoritarian rule in the Star Wars universe. Yet, beneath the surface of his calculated tyranny lies a contradiction. Despite being a Sith Lord, his empire was not a true Sith Empire. Palpatine's need to maintain the facade of Chancellor Palpatine, even as he ruled as Darth Sidious, reveals that his regime was shaped more by pragmatic political maneuvering than the pure philosophy of the Sith. This distinction underscores the compromises and contradictions inherent in his rule and highlights why the Galactic Empire, for all its darkness, fell short of being a true manifestation of Sith ideology. The Sith are an order defined by their embrace of the dark side of the Force, which they view as the ultimate tool for power, freedom, and self-determination. They reject the Jedi's philosophy of selflessness and harmony, instead embracing ambition, dominance, and the survival of the fittest. At the heart of the Sith belief system lies the Rule of Two, established by Darth Bane, which posits that there should always be two Sith, a master and an apprentice, whose relationship is defined by conflict, betrayal, and eventual succession. This structure ensures that only the strongest, most cunning Sith rise to power. A true Sith Empire, then, would reflect these values, prioritizing power, individual dominance, and the elimination of weakness. Such an empire would likely revel in its Sith identity, openly wielding the dark side as the cornerstone of its governance. Palpatine's empire, however, diverged from these principles in critical ways. Most notably, he concealed his Sith identity for the majority of his rule. While he held absolute power as emperor, his public persona remained rooted in the identity of Chancellor Palpatine, the seemingly benevolent leader who had reluctantly accepted emergency powers to protect the Republic during the Clone Wars. Even as the Galactic Empire solidified into a brutal dictatorship, it was presented as a continuation of the Republic, not its antithesis. Palpatine maintained the illusion of legitimacy, presenting the Empire as a necessary evolution to preserve order and stability. The Sith, meanwhile, were erased from public consciousness, with their history and teachings suppressed. This deliberate obfuscation of his Sith identity was antithetical to the ethos of the Sith, who typically sought to dominate openly and impose their will through fear and power. Palpatine's choice to hide his Sith nature was driven by pragmatic considerations. By presenting himself as a savior of the Republic, he was able to manipulate the galaxy's political institutions and gain the loyalty of the populace. His rise to power was facilitated not through an open display of Sith dominance, but through deception, diplomacy, and the exploitation of existing systems. He relied on the Senate, the Jedi Order, and the galactic bureaucracy to achieve his goals, subverting them from within rather than destroying them outright. This approach allowed him to consolidate power without provoking widespread rebellion during the early stages of his rule. However, it also meant that the Empire's foundations were built on a lie, with its strength dependent on the maintenance of the facade rather than the unapologetic embrace of Sith philosophy. Another critical aspect of Palpatine's empire that distinguishes it from a true Sith Empire is its emphasis on order and conformity. The Galactic Empire was defined by its rigid hierarchy, centralized control, and suppression of individuality. It sought to impose uniformity across the galaxy, with a focus on militarization, propaganda, and the eradication of dissent. While these methods were effective in maintaining control, they were fundamentally at odds with the Sith's embrace of personal ambition and the pursuit of power. In a true Sith Empire, individual strength and cunning would be celebrated, and leaders would rise and fall based on their ability to assert dominance. Palpatine's empire, by contrast, sought to eliminate such competition, with loyalty to the Emperor prioritized above all else. This approach stifled the very qualities that the Sith value most, reducing the galaxy to a state of subservience rather than fostering the conditions for the strong to thrive. Moreover, Palpatine's rule of two relationship with his apprentice, Darth Vader, further illustrates the disconnect between his empire and true Sith ideals. In a traditional Sith dynamic, the apprentice is expected to eventually overthrow the master, embodying the principle of survival of the fittest. Palpatine, however, manipulated Vader into a position of perpetual subservience. After Anakin Skywalker's transformation into Darth Vader, he was physically and emotionally broken, rendered dependent on Palpatine's guidance and support, Rather than nurturing Vader's potential to surpass him, Palpatine deliberately kept him weakened, ensuring that his own rule would remain unchallenged. This deviation from the Sith tradition of encouraging internal conflict and betrayal further demonstrates how Palpatine's empire prioritized stability and control over the chaos and ambition that define the Sith. Additionally, the Galactic Empire's reliance on non-Sith enforcers and institutions reflects its departure from Sith principles. The Empire's military and political elite were primarily composed of non-Force-sensitive individuals, many of whom were unaware of Palpatine's true nature. Figures like Grand Moff Tarkin and Admiral Thrawn played central roles in the administration of the Empire, yet their loyalty was to the Emperor as a political leader, not as a Sith Lord. While Palpatine undoubtedly used the dark side to maintain his power, the Empire's infrastructure was not inherently Sith in nature. Instead, it was a hybrid system, combining the bureaucratic and military frameworks of the Republic with the authoritarianism of Palpatine's rule. This reliance on non-Sith elements further diluted the Sith identity of the Empire, making it more of a pragmatic dictatorship than a true embodiment of Sith ideology. Finally, Palpatine's ultimate goal, to achieve immortality and rule the galaxy indefinitely, was fundamentally at odds with the Sith tradition. The Rule of Two was designed to ensure the continual evolution of the Sith, with each generation surpassing the last. Palpatine's desire to live forever and maintain absolute power was a betrayal of this principle, as it sought to prevent the rise of a more powerful successor. By attempting to halt the natural progression of the Sith, Palpatine effectively undermined the very philosophy he claimed to uphold. In conclusion, while Palpatine's empire was undeniably shaped by Sith principles, it was not a true Sith empire. Palpatine's need to maintain the facade of Chancellor Palpatine, coupled with his reliance on non-Sith institutions and his deviation from Sith traditions, reveals the compromises and contradictions at the heart of his rule. By prioritizing stability, control, and personal immortality over the pure pursuit of Sith ideals, Palpatine created an empire that was Sith in name only. This distinction not only underscores the limitations of his vision but also serves as a reminder of the complexities and contradictions inherent in the pursuit of absolute power. The ancient Sith would have despised Palpatine for the nature of his facade-driven empire, as it fundamentally contradicted their philosophy, values, and traditions. The ancient Sith, whose beliefs were rooted in the open and unapologetic dominance of the dark side, would have viewed Palpatine's reliance on subterfuge and his concealment of Sith identity as a betrayal of the very essence of their order. By creating an empire that prioritized political manipulation, conformity, and the suppression of the Sith legacy, Palpatine would have been seen by these figures as a Sith who compromised the purity of their ideals in favor of personal pragmatism and cowardly deceit. The Sith of ancient times, such as those of the Sith Empire in the days of Naga Sadow, Marka Ragnos, and Exar Kuan, prided themselves on their open worship of the dark side and their ability to wield it without restraint. These Sith rulers sought to dominate through raw power, terror, and the strength of their own mastery over the Force. They did not hide their identities. On the contrary, they ruled as Sith Lords, ensuring that their subjects knew they were under the dominion of the dark side. The Sith of this era would have seen Palpatine's decision to mask his true nature behind the persona of Chancellor Palpatine as a betrayal of the Sith's defining principle, the unrestrained assertion of power. To the ancient Sith, the facade Palpatine maintained as a seemingly benevolent politician would have been anathema. The Sith despised weakness, and deceit of this kind might have been seen as a sign of fear or insecurity. By ruling from the shadows, Palpatine avoided the direct confrontation that the Sith valued so highly. The ancient Sith believed in the philosophy that power should be taken and wielded openly, with the strongest proving their dominance through displays of might. For Palpatine to rise to power not through conquest but through manipulation of the Republic's democratic systems would have been perceived as a violation of the Sith's principle of survival of the fittest. They would have regarded his reliance on secrecy and political gamesmanship as an indication that he lacked the courage to assert his Sith identity and impose his will without subterfuge. Moreover, Palpatine's deliberate erasure of Sith history and teachings would have been a profound insult to the ancient Sith. Under his regime, the Sith Order was hidden from galactic awareness, with its legacy suppressed rather than celebrated. Ancient Sith rulers like Tulak Hord and Darth Revan were figures of legend, whose empires were monuments to their mastery of the dark side. These leaders ensured that their Sith legacy would endure, with their names and accomplishments etched into history as testaments to their power. Palpatine's empire, by contrast, sought to erase all traces of the Sith, ensuring that their existence remained a secret even from those within the Empire's upper echelons. To the ancient Sith, this suppression of their heritage would have been unforgivable, as it undermined the pride and legacy that were integral to their identity. Additionally, the ancient Sith would have despised Palpatine's emphasis on conformity and obedience within the Galactic Empire. The Sith tradition celebrates individuality, ambition, and the pursuit of power. In the ancient Sith empires, competition and internal conflict were seen as necessary for growth, as they allowed the strongest and most capable to rise to the top. Palpatine's empire, however, prioritized loyalty and subservience over personal ambition. His reliance on non-force-sensitive bureaucrats and military leaders, such as Grand Moff Tarkin and Admiral Thrawn, would have been seen as a further dilution of Sith principles. By building an empire that discouraged the very ambition and competition that the Sith valued, Palpatine created a system that stifled the natural evolution of power, which the ancient Sith believed was the key to their strength. Palpatine's treatment of his apprentice, Darth Vader, would also have been viewed with disdain by the ancient Sith. In Sith philosophy, the rule of two was designed to ensure that the apprentice would grow strong enough to overthrow the master, thereby guaranteeing the continual strengthening of the Sith Order. However, Palpatine deliberately weakened Vader, keeping him dependent and subservient rather than nurturing his potential to rise as a successor. Ancient Sith Lords would have seen this as a perversion of their traditions, as it undermined the fundamental principle of the rule of two. Palpatine's refusal to allow the natural cycle of Sith succession to occur would have been seen as selfish and short-sighted, prioritizing his personal power over the long-term evolution of the Sith. Furthermore, Palpatine's obsession with immortality would have been a point of contention for the ancient Sith. While many Sith pursued immortality as a means of achieving ultimate power, they also understood the importance of the Sith's generational progression. By seeking to rule the galaxy indefinitely, Palpatine sought to halt this progression, denying the rise of future Sith Lords who might surpass him. Ancient Sith like Darth Bane, who established the rule of two, would have regarded this as a betrayal of the Sith's core principle, the survival of the fittest. In their eyes, Palpatine's refusal to accept the inevitability of being challenged and overthrown was an act of weakness and cowardice. Finally, the ancient Sith would have rejected Palpatine's empire as a pale imitation of the glorious Sith empires of old. Leaders like Exar Kuin and Naga Sadow ruled through the sheer power of the dark side, commanding legions of Sith and dark side followers who openly embraced their allegiance. Their empires were not mere political constructs. They were embodiments of the Sith's unrelenting will to dominate and conquer. Palpatine's empire, by contrast, was primarily a bureaucratic and military machine, reliant on non-force-sensitive operatives and devoid of the dark side zeal that defined the Sith of ancient times. To the ancient Sith, this lack of spiritual and ideological purity would have rendered Palpatine's empire unworthy of the Sith name. In conclusion, the ancient Sith would have despised Palpatine for creating an empire that betrayed the core values and traditions of their order. His reliance on deception, his suppression of Sith history, and his emphasis on conformity and stability over ambition and competition marked a profound departure from the principles that defined the Sith. To the ancient Sith, Palpatine's empire was not a true Sith empire but a compromised and diluted shadow of their legacy, built on cowardice and betrayal rather than the unapologetic dominance of the dark side.